More than likely, this is right on top of downtown Cullman right now. So again, the next call to action, if you are north or east of downtown Cullman, you need to be in a safe place. Clearly, everybody in downtown Cullman has to be in a safe place right now. And if you're north or east of Cullman, you need to be in a safe place as well, because that is a violent, large, dangerous tornado.
We have no time to go back. We'll have to go north. All right, we're all right. We're all right. Okay, we gotta go.
The 2011 Super Outbreak was a massive and catastrophic tornado outbreak that plowed through 21 states and southern Canada between April 25th and April 28th, 2011. In that time, a total of 360 tornadoes touched down, making this the biggest tornado outbreak in U.S. history and the worst tornado outbreak since the 1974 Super Outbreak. Undoubtedly, the worst day of this outbreak was on April 27th, with 216 tornadoes touching down across the country, with the Deep South being affected the worst. Of these 216 tornadoes, there were 66 EF2 tornadoes or stronger and 15 violent EF4 or EF5 tornadoes. In this two-part documentary, I will be going over 20 of the worst tornadoes of the entire outbreak, as well as the meteorology behind this outbreak and why it was so violent. The setup of the 2011 Super Outbreak was truly unlike any other, with the conditions being just right enough for a recipe of disaster. The weather conditions from April 25th to April 28th showed temperatures in the upper 70s and lower 80s across the Deep South, with dew points exceeding 70 degrees in some areas. An already moist atmosphere fueled by the Gulf of Mexico would ultimately clash with a colder and drier environment coming down from Canada. That, with a very intense jet providing insane amounts of wind shear across the region, would lead to a rapidly destabilizing atmosphere and result in parameters favorable for such an outbreak. The skew-T profiles for the day of April 27th across the Deep South became incredibly concerning for the Storm Prediction Center and the National Weather Service offices in the Deep South. The night before, severe thunderstorms and tornadoes had moved through the area and caused significant amounts of damage. After this overnight and early morning threat had passed, it seemed that the worst was over. And looking at any of the soundings from Little Rock, Jackson, or Birmingham, you would think it was. There was a capped environment all the way up the atmosphere with no severe threat possible. However, that theory would be proven incorrect, as hours later, the severe threat returned, and the Deep South saw one of the largest surges of instability I have ever seen. In a scenario where it normally would take a few days for the atmosphere to recover before producing more severe weather, it would only take 6 hours. The Cape in the Birmingham area went from 0 to 2,600 joules per kilogram, which may not sound like a lot to produce the outbreak of this caliber, but due to the Deep South being so close to the Gulf of Mexico and such an area of rich moisture present, there was a smaller cap to overcome. This meant that the instability would need much less effort to initiate severe weather than originally expected. There was also the fact that the storms the night before eroded the lower level cap, which would become very evident by 1 p.m. on the 27th. This, coupled with up to 50 knots of wind shear between the surface and 1 kilometer, would make it very evident that the worst was yet to come. For the rest of the documentary, we will be going over the notable tornadoes in chronological order to keep things organized and easier to follow along. With that being said, let's get right into the weather. The Fountain Lake Tornado was the first notable tornado of the entire outbreak, with it occurring on April 25th. This tornado would touch down at 6:07 p.m. north of Hot Springs, Arkansas, and would cause major damage to homes in Garland and Saline counties as it tracked through the area. The tornado damaged or destroyed about 200 homes and would cause major damage to the forest surrounding the area. The tornado then neared Fountain Lake, where extensive damage was reported, as well as boats and docks being destroyed. Notable damage from the tornado included removing the top floor of a 2-story building, a well-built farmhouse being destroyed, and church buildings being badly damaged, with cars piled up at the parking lots. The tornado then lifted at 6:30 p.m. after being on the ground for 21 miles, leaving extensive damage to the Hot Springs area of Arkansas. While only one person was killed, 20 others were injured, some suffering serious injuries, which was why this tornado was notable and featured in this documentary. The damage from the tornado totaled around $23 million. While not the most extreme tornado of the outbreak by any reach, this served as an ominous prelude for what was to come. The Vilonia Tornado, while being the weakest tornado featured in this documentary, was the first true sign of what was to come in the following days. The tornado would touch down at 6:49 p.m. on April 25th and initially affected mainly rural areas. A tornado warning was issued around 7 p.m. as the track of the tornado had it approaching Vilonia. However, the tornado began to strengthen into a wedge tornado as it entered the town at 7:30. A tornado emergency was quickly issued due to the structure of the tornado as the residents took cover. The tornado first struck a trailer park just outside of Vilonia, causing extensive damage resulting in 4 deaths and 16 injuries. 2 of these deaths were a couple seeking shelter in a shipping container as the tornado lifted it 140 yards away into a nearby lake. The nearly 2-mile wide tornado then entered Vilonia proper and damaged numerous homes and businesses, as well as flipping several semi-trucks passing through the town. The American Red Cross noted that 34 site-built houses and 62 mobile homes were destroyed, with an additional 91 built homes and 41 mobile homes suffering major damage in the area. The tornado began to weaken as it affected rural areas, damaging many trees and tractor trailers as it kept going before dissipating at 7:59 p.m. The tornado tracked 51 miles and caused over $50 million in damages throughout the track. While this is nowhere near the intensity compared to the tornadoes in the rest of the documentary, the fact that it caused that much damage and killed 4 people along its path goes to show that no matter the intensity of the tornado, it can still very much be deadly, especially if it is a wedge tornado. This tornado was the first long-track tornado of the outbreak and a stark warning of what was to come 2 days later. The Europa Tornado was a long-track nighttime tornado that mainly affected rural areas across Mississippi in the overnight hours of April 27th. The tornado first touched down at 2:29 a.m. near Europa and would mainly affect rural areas and small towns. Numerous mobile homes were severely damaged, several of which were destroyed, and several homes sustained severe roof damage, with one home being destroyed in Chickasaw County, and many barns and sheds were either damaged or destroyed. One notable area of damage was a school in Cumberland, Mississippi, which suffered a direct hit and sustained EF3 damage. In Monroe County, 31 homes and businesses were damaged in the North Wren area. The tornado then dissipated at 3:26 a.m., making this the strongest tornado in the overnight and early morning event of the Super Outbreak. While no one was killed, 25 people were injured, and the damage totaled at $7.3 million. The tornado tracked almost 59 miles, meaning that this tornado was moving at a speed of over 60 miles per hour, and showed that the worst was yet to come. The first EF5 tornado of the day, the Philadelphia Tornado, will become one of the most well-known tornadoes of the outbreak, not due to the damage or the casualties, but due to the sheer strength of the tornado. The tornado first touched down at 2:30 p.m. near Philadelphia, Mississippi, and would rapidly strengthen as the tornado tore through many trees at EF2 intensity. As the tornado grew, a tornado emergency was issued for northeast Neshoba County. EF4 damage was soon being caused as the tornado traveled along and parallel to Mississippi State Route 21 and partially swept away a brick home near the intersection with Mississippi State Route 491. Soon after, the tornado began to show up on radar. The first EF5 damage of the outbreak occurred as it began to scour the ground area in its path. Up to 2 feet of dirt and soil were removed by the tornado, and grass was torn out by the roots. Large trees were also uprooted, debarked, and defoliated, as well as thrown up to 20 yards, showing how strong this tornado was at this point. The tornado slightly weakened as it moved through the Pearl River Resort, where it destroyed a historic log cabin, fencing, lighting, and dugouts at 2 baseball fields. The tornado then moved through the small town of Coy before re-intensifying to EF5 strength as it entered Kemper County. A 3,000 square foot mini-mart was damaged beyond repair, and 11 people sought shelter inside the building's bathroom when the tornado struck. Miraculously, all escaped without injury. Along the Kemper-Winston County line, as scouring took place again, and asphalt was ripped from the roads. On Green Road, a double-wide mobile home anchored to the ground was lofted 300 yards and obliterated when it landed at a nearby tree, killing all 3 occupants inside. The tornado then weakened to EF3 strength, while cars were still being hurled hundreds of yards, often bouncing along the way, with some almost unrecognizable as they were wrapped around trees. The tornado continued weakening to EF2 strength, but still produced extensive tree and property damage. The tornado then briefly re-strengthened to EF3 strength as pavement scouring and tree damage continued. After this, the tornado gradually weakened as it affected mainly rural areas before dissipating at 3 p.m., leaving behind a shocking sight. The tornado tracked 28 miles throughout its life cycle, and it was enough to leave a mark. The 3 people killed in the mobile home were the only fatalities of the tornado, with 8 others injured. Damages were totaled only at $1.1 million, mainly due to affecting rural areas. But the sheer strength of the tornado would not go unnoticed, and it would become infamous for its ground and pavement scouring as it terrorized rural Mississippi. The Cullman Tornado was a highly visible multi-vortex tornado that would be infamous for entering downtown Cullman and completely decimating it. The tornado touched down at 2:40 p.m. on the north side of Lewis Smith Lake and initially caused minor damage near Crane Hill before rapidly intensifying and tracking directly towards Cullman. The tornado then entered Cullman while being tracked and broadcast by several news stations, including WBRC and WSJW in Birmingham. The WSJW camera captured the destruction as the tornado ripped through Cullman. Radio stations in downtown Cullman also reported on the tornado, with some being able to capture it passing over their stations until they lost power. Downtown Cullman was devastated by the tornado, with major damage being along a 2-block area through the center of the downtown business district. Numerous well-built brick homes in downtown Cullman were heavily damaged or destroyed. As the tornado ravaged through the town, it briefly gained EF4 intensity. This was noted due to the damage associated with Christian Lutheran Church in downtown Cullman, with most of the structure completely collapsed. Many homes were damaged or destroyed in residential areas of the city, with extensive tree and power line damage occurring. A total of 867 residences and 94 businesses within the city of Cullman were damaged or destroyed by this violent tornado. The tornado continued northeast, becoming a wedge as it reattained EF4 intensity. It then passed just north of Fairview, completely destroying homes and debarking trees in the area. The tornado then crossed into Marshall County and impacted the rural community of Ruth. A large brick home was swept away in this area, with the debris scattered 100 yards from the foundation. Other homes and structures were destroyed in the Ruth area, and a gas station was obliterated. The power grid in the area was completely crippled by the tornado's effects, and many roads in the area were obstructed by downed trees and power lines. The tornado then began to weaken as it approached the Tennessee River, now affecting rural areas and nearby forests. The tornado then dissipated shortly after crossing the Tennessee River at 3:38 p.m. as it approached the town of New Hope, leaving behind a path of carnage in its wake. The tornado tracked almost 47 miles and would result in 6 deaths and almost 50 injuries, the majority of which in Cullman. The damage total remains unknown, but what was known was that those who were affected by it began the long road to recovery as other events were unfolding. The North Wren tornado would touch down at 2:48 p.m. in Webster County and initially started out as a rather weak tornado. However, as it was affecting rural areas, the tornado would intensify into an EF3 tornado as it approached the communities of Anchor, Houston, and North Wren. The tornado caused major damage to all 3 communities and the area around it, destroying 187 homes and damaging up to 1,000 others. Many mobile homes were destroyed or flipped over because of the tornado as it moved at approximately 60 miles per hour. The tornado would continue affecting rural areas east of North Wren before dissipating at 3:38 p.m. In total, 4 people were killed, 1 in Anchor, 2 in Houston, and another while inside a vehicle trying to outrun the tornado. 25 others were injured, and the damage estimated at $3.27 million. The Hackleburg Tornado was the strongest, longest tracked, and one of the most infamous tornadoes not just of the outbreak, but in recorded history. The tornado would touch down at 3:05 p.m. about 5 miles southwest of Hamilton and would track to the northeast, causing significant tree and roof damage. At the beginning, damage was EF1 to EF2 as it mainly affected rural areas. The tornado then rapidly intensified to EF4 strength as it approached Hackleburg, moving parallel to US Route 43. The tornado further strengthened to EF5 intensity and widened to 3/4 of a mile wide as it began to sweep away homes along the highway. One large brick home along Hayfield Road was swept completely away, and vehicles from the house were thrown up to 150 yards, with patches of scoured grass also noted on the property. The tornado then struck Hackleburg directly, completely obliterating the town. Numerous homes were swept away, as well as many businesses getting destroyed, and cars were tossed as far as 200 yards away from where they originated. One notable area of damage was a brick home in the city's southwest portion that had its poured concrete stem walls sheared off at a ground level. The tornado completely debarked numerous trees in Hackleburg and even scoured poured concrete at one location. 75% of the town was destroyed because of the tornado, and 18 people died in the area. The tornado then crossed into Franklin County, reducing additional homes to their foundations as it neared Phil Campbell. The tornado would then obliterate Phil Campbell at EF5 intensity, resulting in apocalyptic damage. Numerous homes were swept away, with a few even having their foundations destroyed as well. A 25-foot section of pavement was scoured from the road in Phil Campbell, with chunks of asphalt scattered up to 1/3 of a mile away. Multiple mobile homes were completely obliterated as well, with their mangled frames tossed up to 50 yards away, and an underground storm shelter in the town had its concrete roof torn off, and grass was scoured from the hillside surrounding Phil Campbell. The tornado continued as it left the town and maintained its strength, sweeping away additional homes and scouring the pavement off the road. The tornado then reached its maximum intensity as it tore through Oak Grove, with the damage intensity reaching well into the EF5 range as the tornado widened to over a mile wide. Oak Grove suffered an apocalyptic hit as large and well-built brick homes with extensive anchoring were swept completely away, with the debris strewn and windrowed long distances through nearby fields. A Corvette in the nearby area was thrown 641 feet and destroyed, while another vehicle was never found as the tornado lifted it into its vortex. The tornado continued into Lawrence County and maintained EF5 strength as it struck the small town of Mount Hope, where another apocalyptic scene occurred. Single-family homes and a restaurant were wiped off the face of the earth, with nothing but the foundation and a pile of debris remained at the restaurant, and a small portion of the restaurant's foundation slab buckled due to the intense winds. Many mobile homes were also destroyed with the frames mangled, and A single-family home was obliterated, with the walls and contents strewn over 100 yards. One infamous event with this tornado occurred when WAAY TV meteorologist and Mount Hope resident Gary Dobbs spotted the tornado from his front window, but was unable to get to the storm shelter since he was giving a live report to viewers of the station. While the home was destroyed around him, Dobbs was lifted by the tornado and thrown 40 feet from his residence. The door of the storm shelter of the property was torn off, but no one was seriously injured in the shelter, while Dobbs required hospitalization due to suffering severe injuries. The tornado then weakened to EF3 strength as it struck the town of Langton, where multiple homes lost their roofs or had interior walls left standing, and a gas station sustained significant damage. The tornado re-intensified to high-end EF4 strength as it passed northwest of Moulton and Trinity, destroying multiple homes and mobile homes along the way. Several cars were tossed into fields and wrapped around debarked trees, and damage continued along County Roads 217 and 222, where a handful of high-voltage power poles were destroyed, cutting off electricity in the area. The tornado continued toward Tanner, where two F5 tornadoes demolished the community in the 1974 Super Outbreak. The tornado then entered the community and, like 1974, leveled the town. Several well-constructed homes with anchor bolts were slabbed, and one home had scattered debris over 300 yards away from the origin point, with large items carried completely away. Several more homes, a mobile home park, and a church that was destroyed by the tornadoes in 1974 but rebuilt, were wiped away again by this tornado. The tornado began to weaken again after leveling Tanner, becoming an EF3 tornado before crossing into Madison County, tearing through Harvest and Tuney. The tornado then weakened significantly as it approached the Tennessee River, producing EF0 tree damage south of Hazel Green and through mainly rural areas as it approached the Tennessee border. After crossing into Tennessee, the tornado gradually strengthened into an EF3 as it caused heavy damage to homes and farms alike. After this, the tornado weakened for the final time, as it would become an EF0 in rural Tennessee before dissipating at 5:40 p.m., leaving 132 miles of pure carnage. The tornado would kill 72 people, making this the deadliest tornado in Alabama history, and injured 145 people. The damage totaled at $1.29 billion, making this one of the costliest tornadoes in American history, as it would leave a legacy of shock, horror, and for some, an apocalyptic nightmare. While Hackleburg was being annihilated by one tornado, another violent and long-track tornado was developing 40 miles to the south. This new tornado would touch down near Pickensville at 3:40 p.m. and initially began as an EF1 tornado, as it mainly affected rural areas in north-central Alabama. However, as the tornado approached Cordova, it rapidly intensified into a high-end EF3 tornado as it entered the town. The tornado began to cause havoc across Cordova at approximately 4:45 p.m., where they were recovering from another EF3 tornado that had occurred earlier that day. A lot of the damage that was still in the area that was hit was lofted into this tornado and would cause further damage in the areas that were spared previously. The tornado would carve a half-a-mile wide path through downtown Cordova at either high-end EF3 or low-end EF4 strength, with many homes heavily damaged or destroyed. The tornado then exited the town as an EF4 tornado while leveling homes and hurling tractor trailers up to 500 yards away before moving into rural areas. The tornado rapidly weakened near Arkadelphia and headed towards Bluntsville as an EF1 or EF2 tornado, as it caused heavy damage to homes and trees on the way. The tornado then re-strengthened into an EF3 as it would enter Bluntsville, causing heavy damage to numerous homes and businesses as it plowed through the community. The tornado then weakened down to an EF1 as it headed towards Guntersville, before dissipating just a few miles away from the town at 5:56 p.m. In total, 13 people were killed by the tornado and 54 were injured, with the damage totaling at $170 million. The tornado is one of the more known EF4s due to completing the destruction an earlier tornado started and leveling what was left of Cordova. The Smithville Tornado would touch down at 3:42 p.m. and would rapidly intensify into an EF5 tornado as it approached Smithville. The tornado entered the town 3 minutes later and would result in apocalyptic damage. The 3/4 of a mile wide wedge tornado would slab many homes, decimate mobile homes, and would throw vehicles up to a half a mile away from their origin point. One infamous case was when an SUV was lifted by the tornado and would travel a half a mile into the Smithville water tower before bouncing off and traveling a 1/4 mile further before touching the ground, having become shredded in an unrecognizable mess. The tornado also scoured the pavement and sidewalks of Smithville, showing the raw strength of the storm. It then exited Smithville, rapidly weakening down to an EF1 while affecting rural areas. This would continue for some time before the tornado re-intensified into a high-end EF3 as it crossed into Alabama and struck the community of Scottsville. Many homes there were destroyed and several were killed as a result. This intensity continued into Hamilton, where an equal amount of damage occurred in the region before weakening as it entered more rural areas of western Alabama. The tornado then would dissipate near the town of Hodges at 4:23 p.m., leaving a damage path of almost 38 miles. In total, 23 people were killed by this tornado, with 137 others injured. The damage totaled at $14.4 million, the vast majority of which was in Smithville, where the entire town was decimated. The Smithtown tornado is one of the lesser-known tornadoes of the outbreak due to it affecting mainly rural communities in Mississippi and Alabama, but where it did hit was devastating, and so many people severely underestimate the strength of this tornado when first asked about it. It really is a shame that this tornado did not get the recognition it truly deserves. However, as you have seen so far, it is understandable as more tornadoes were also on the way. The Flat Rock Tornado was a multiple vortex high-end EF4 tornado that devastated numerous communities in Alabama and Georgia. The tornado touched down at 4:01 p.m. north of Section, initially producing EF0 to EF1 tree damage. The tornado rapidly intensified to low-end EF4 strength as it passed northwest of Pigsaw and Rosalie, destroying numerous mobile homes and block foundations, scattering debris hundreds of yards and killing 3 people in the area. As it passed near Flat Rock, the tornado reached its max intensity as it decimated thousands of trees in its path. A heavy propane tank was lofted and thrown 100 yards from outside a farm, and 19 cattle on the property were killed. Remarkably, a family of 4 taking shelter inside the house were completely unharmed as the tornado maintained EF4 strength, as it tore through the rural community of Shiloh, sweeping away numerous mobile homes and block foundation homes, resulting in 5 deaths in the region. The tornado then crossed into Georgia and crossed Interstate 59 as it hit Trenton at EF3 intensity. Dozens of homes were either destroyed or sustained major damage, with a grocery store, 2 apartment complexes, and a funeral home being destroyed by the tornado moving through the region. The tornado then weakened to EF2 strength as it struck the community of Flintstone, resulting in major damage in the area. The tornado continued northeast, weakening to EF0 strength before finally dissipating near Fort Oglethorpe at 4:57 p.m., resulting in catastrophic damage for much of the impact area. In total, 14 people were killed and over 50 were injured, with the damage totaled at over $25 million. That's it for part 1. I hope you enjoyed this part of the documentary. If you did, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel as it gets more people engaged with weather. Thank you very much, stay safe, and see you in a little bit.